Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth episode in the series Get the Facts. This episode I'm entitling The Oddities of the Flat Earth Theory. The oddities, the weirdness, the crazy roundabout circular kind of reasoning, the denial of reality and proven earth science. All of that I'm going to be sharing with you at this time about the flat earth theory that is growing among some in the world as we speak. The world in which we live at the moment is a confused world. We can clearly see that, for instance, in the LGBT movement that has taken over the globe in the last maybe 30 or 40 years. A world turned upside down in which normality is no longer accepted. It's hip, it's popular to go against the norms and to be as weird and as off the wall as possible. So we have people denying that there are real genders, people who think that they have all forms of genders, male, female, mixture, universal, no gender at all. It's that kind of world in which we are living, and so it's not surprising that it is precisely at this time that we have this push for people to accept that the earth is flat, despite all of the thousands of years, the hundreds of years, a wide variety of scientists of all walks of life, the modern technology, the various methods we can prove that the earth is really a global ball. We have the Flat Earth Society. Those who are, it would appear to me that they have decided to take on the establishment, including in the area of education, and to try to turn everything on its head. Knowledge is being turned upside down and is being denied and is being rejected and is being challenged by so many, especially in this area of the flat earth theory. And so what I'm going to do today is to show you how the flat earth proponents have literally rejected what is consistent and true and has turned reality on its head, and is in actual fact they are so confused among themselves, and they have made normal everyday knowledge and education something that is doubted, denied, and in actual fact the end result is more weird than you think. So come with me, dear listener, as we now look at some of the oddities, the weirdness, the crazy reasoning that we find among those who propose that the earth is flat. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is to start off by looking at how the flat earth proponents, in order to get their theory to seem to work, they change up something as basic as compass directions. And so, for instance, if you look at the way flat earth proponents explain direction, there we have an illustration on screen of how they see directions. North in the center of the flat disc or coin-like earth that's laying flat. South is all around the earth. So you can go any direction from north in the center to end up south. So you can go up to go south. You can go left to go south. You can go right to go south. You can go down to go south. You can go anywhere from where you are to end up at south. Now, if that is not confusion of the highest order, I don't know what is. So in other words, if you're standing, let's say, in the Middle East, just north of Africa, you can actually travel in a straight line upwards, go north, and still end up, if you keep going, you can end up south. So you can go any direction in a straight line and still end up at south. That's the kind of weirdness that we are talking about. Now, let's look at what the real world of directions, consistent and true, is all about. So here we have on screen an illustration of the earth. Anything that is towards the top of the earth, or the top of a map showing the earth, is north. And you cannot go anywhere else but north when you go upwards or towards that direction. The same is true. You go to the opposite of that, south, and you keep going in that direction, opposite to north, you will end up nowhere else but south of that. Consistent and true. You go towards the right, you're going east. You go towards the west, to the left, you're going west, and nowhere else when you keep going in that direction. So when we look at the reality, that's what we see. North, the magnetic compass is attracted towards the area towards the top of the world, and that is consistent. You use a magnetic compass, you use a global positioning system, that's what you recognize. South is always towards the bottom of the map, downwards. East is always going towards the right, west is always going towards the left. And these directions are fixed in relation to each other, permanent and fixed. They are not confused and all over the place, as we see, for instance, on the flat earth or the flat theory compass direction. Now, for those who may want to use the Bible to try to support themselves, let's see how the Bible debunk this kind of weird, confused direction, or so-called directions that come from the flat earthers. Now, let us prove that the Bible has fixed directions in relation to each other that are considered the compass direction. So if you use the Bible, for those who are Bible believers and try to use the Bible to support flat earth, notice how the directions of the Bible are consistent. Now in Revelation chapter 7, the Bible uses the expression the four corners of the earth to indicate that the directions are fixed, just like the four corners of a building. The earth is always, throughout the Bible, is described in the analogy of a building. And so, just like our building has four walls and corners, which are fixed in relation to that building, notice how the Bible uses that analogy to suggest the four directions of the compass. Revelation chapter 7 and verse 1, after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth. Obviously the earth, even if you're a flat earther who believes that the earth is a circular disc, like a coin, no circle has four corners. So whether you be a globe earther or a flat earther that believes the earth is a disc, in both scenarios it has no corners, because you're dealing with an object that is round. So there clearly means that the Bible here is using an analogy. It's speaking idiomatically to mean the four compass points. And notice, they are fixed just like the four corners of a building. And that is why it says, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. All of this is symbolic language, because the book of Revelation is symbolic. The angels are symbolic. The four winds are symbolic, referring to strife which will cover the earth. And notice now, in relation to directions, to show you how directions are fixed, John says, I saw another angel ascending from the east. Now, east, as far as the Bible is concerned, is fixed. Flat earthers say no. East is going around in a circle, as you can see here, in an anti-clockwise direction. South is all over the place surrounding the disk. West is going clockwise in a circle. Confusion. But when we go to the reality, here's what we see. North is fixed. South is fixed. This is real, true life. East is fixed as a direction. West is fixed. Now let's continue to prove that from the scriptures that those directions are fixed. So we go, for instance, to Genesis chapter 28. And here God is speaking to Abraham. And he says, while he's standing there in the Middle East, which is now what we consider Palestine, the land which God had promised to give to Israel, God said to Abraham, and thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. This is because standing in Israel, standing in the land which was promised to Israel, here it is. So Abraham standing here, looking to the north, would be to the top of the map. Looking to the west would be to the left of the map towards the coasts. Looking to the east, right of the map. Looking towards the south, bottom of the map. Downwards. These areas, God said, as you look north, as you look east, as you look west, as you look south, these areas will be occupied by the Israelites as a promise that they would inherit this land. Directions, they are fixed. They're not all over the place. Fixed. Let's prove it further from the Bible itself as we wrap up on this matter of directions. Here the Bible uses again the analogy of how directions are fixed by referring to the New Jerusalem, a city that God is promising that his people live in. And notice in that city, on the east, Revelation 21 verse 13, on the east of that city, 3 gates. So you would only go in one direction towards the right to find those 3 gates. On the north, one direction, fixed, to go find those 3 gates. On the south, one direction. Can't be all over the place as the flat earthers are saying, forming a circumference around the globe. No, south is one direction fixed, downwards on a map. On the south, 3 gates, and on the west, 3 gates. Dear listener, it is so plain, you can't escape it. So if you use the Bible is fixed. Let's use one last example. In Acts, we find Philip, one of Jesus' disciples, was asked to go and help the Ethiopian eunuch to understand the scriptures. He was reading the book of Isaiah 53, and he couldn't understand what it was referring to or who it was referring to. And so Philip was commissioned to go. Notice the direction of the angel. The angel of the Lord spake unto Philip, saying, arise and go toward the south. Now, if south is all over the place, and you can go in any direction to end up at south, Philip would not know exactly where to go. But here south is, notice how the Bible is specific. Go towards the south unto the way that goeth down from Jerusalem unto Gaza, which is in the desert. So if the Bible uses the language to suggest that south is downwards, away from where you're standing, and if you represent on a map, here is how it would look. So here is, if you notice, to the left of this map, on the coast is Gaza, and north of that would be obviously where he's coming from. Go down to Gaza, which is in southern Israel. There it is. Let me look at the other map to see if it's even clearer. So, here we go. Jerusalem, where Philip would have gotten the instruction, south, down, below. So directions where the Bible is concerned is fixed. It's not all over the place like what the flat earthers are trying to say. So if you are asked to go south, you can turn any direction and continue a straight line to end up at south. Nonsense of the highest order. And this is the kind of confusion that the flat earthers are trying to introduce into our schools, to confuse our students, to confuse our kids. But let me just show you with one last illustration how simple directions are. Look at this illustration if you're using it to guide a simple kindergarten child. That's how simple direction is. It's that simple, dear listener. It's not the confusion that we are seeing coming from flat earthers as they turn true knowledge and true science upon its head, upside down. Notice, north. Always north. You go in that direction, it will always be north. South. Down on the map. Bottom. Always be south. East. Always to the right. And you keep going right in that direction. West is the opposite of that. Fixed like the four corners of a building. It's that simple. Can't make it any simpler. And that is why we know that the flat earth is one mixed up hodgepodge of confusion among those who support the flat earth theory. Alright, let's now look at another oddity from the flat earthers. They tell us that in order for the sun to shine and for us to have day and night, what happens is that the sun is directly above our heads just by a few 1,000 miles. Well, the confusion among themselves is that some believe that our firmament is just about over 70 miles high, and the sun is below that firmament, encased in our own atmosphere. And so the sun is just, over 70 miles above our heads. Or maybe it can't be over 70 miles. It has to be a little lower than that. Somewhere probably between 60 and 50 miles, considering the shape of the atmosphere that they say is one tough, impenetrable barrier, the firmament. So in other words, the sun, if it is going to do what they say it does, they would have to have the sun below the tough firmament, maybe about halfway the height of it, going around in a circle above our heads. That's one set of flat earthers. They say the height of our firmament, impenetrable, you can't go through it. And so inside it, below it, is the sun and the moon. 385,580 feet is what I see one flat earther trying to explain the height of our sky. Tough firmament. And inside that is the sun. So if you calculate that, 5,280 feet make a mile, divide 5,280 feet into the so-called height of the firmament, where you can't go through it. It therefore means that the sun would be somewhere lower than that, inside the so-called firmament and below it. What that means is that the sun, according to them, is just about anywhere between, let's say, 40, 60 miles above our heads. And what it does is that this sun, well, some of them say that the sun is somewhere up to about 3,000 miles above our heads. So they are confused among themselves where that is concerned. True science, after using all the various scientific methods of measuring the distance of the sun away from us, is consistent. You will not take up any science book and see different distances of the sun away from us in terms of what has been determined scientifically. But among the flat earthers, confusion reigns. Some say the sun is some 3,000 miles up. Some say it's just a little over 70 miles. Well, anywhere between, let's say, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles up. If that's not confusion, I don't know what is. But anyway, so here is what they say. They say that the sun, I'm trying to find an illustration. So the sun is directly above the flat disk of the earth, the moon as well. In order for us to have day and night, what happens is that you have the sun just spotlight certain areas, like a flashlight. Like when you shine a flashlight on a wall. So the sun shines directly downwards and spotlight areas. Areas that are not in that spotlight will not have day. And it goes around in a circle above our heads, as you're seeing on this diagram. Problem with that is that the sun is a ball of light. We know it is because we have observed it from a distance for years, and with the modern instruments we know it's a ball. So it shines light like when you turn on a bulb in your roof in your home. That light shines from that bulb in every direction. Shines upward towards the roof, downwards towards the floor, left and right, and fill the entire room. Sun doesn't spotlight like a flashlight on one spot and go around in a circle. That's what the flat earthers, they have sat down and cooked up this explanation over the last couple of years, trying to force it upon the real earth to make their flat earth theory work. But the problem with that is that it's not logical, it's not scientific, it doesn't conform to the laws of physics and nature, because a ball of light does not shine light that way. In addition to that, you would have no sunset, because the earth, the moon, and the sun, I'm trying to find a video to illustrate what I'm saying. You would not have any sunrise or sunset. In other words, the sun seeming to come from below the horizon, cross the sky, and go down below the horizon on the opposite side of the sky for the day. You would not have that happening with the earth being directly below the sun, and the sun so-called spotlighting areas and going around in a circle. Why that would be a problem? Let me show you. Here's why that would be a problem. Here's a graphic illustration of the theory of flat earthers. Sun spotlighting areas directly above the flat disk of the earth going around in a circle. Areas in the spotlight have the areas those areas that are not in the spotlight would have night. But notice that the sun and moon are just above, going in a circle around our heads. What that means is that in that scenario, you would never have the sun going down or coming up from below the horizon. Sunrise and sunset would not work. In addition to that, notice as the sun is said to be spotlighting areas on the globe, the sun is directly above, shining downwards, and to change from day to night, each place that it passes over would get direct heat of the same intensity. What that means is that there would be no difference in climate anywhere. Because if direct rays are coming downwards from the same height where the sun is said to be, and to change from day to night daily, the sun has to pass overhead directly, shining downwards. So what you end up with, dear listener, is you will never have difference in climate. Nowhere. You wouldn't have any change or difference in seasons either. Because for season and climate and day and night to operate together, you end up with problems with the flat earth model. Problems galore. And they try to explain it away by saying the sun moves around in circles that are wider and narrower and goes inwards and outwards in the circle above our heads. all of that is made up conjecture. It has never been proven. There's no scientific way to prove it. It's just all made up. Flat earth mumbo jumbo. It's another weird oddity of the flat earth theory. Now let's go to another thing that they say. They say that the earth does not have anything called gravity. And so they deny the findings of all the scientists that have confirmed and reconfirmed over and over that there's actually a force that causes things to fall to the ground. So they denied gravity, and they say, well, if you're living on a ball like earth, then things would fall off like this, as you're seeing in this cartoon. And they assume that if you're standing on a ball like this and your head is pointing in different directions in relation to your feet, so you can have some people's heads pointing to the north, some people's heads pointing to the south, some people's heads pointing to the east, it means that there is no real up for people on the earth. All of that is failure to understand that gravity is what keeps us on the ground. They try to explain it away by saying no gravity exists, and instead what causes things to fall is density and mass. But density and mass is not a force. It doesn't cause things to fall. It just tells you what are the properties of the substance that falls. But they still have not been able to explain what force is there that causes things to always fall downwards towards the ground. So another oddity of them is to deny gravity, and they try to come up with another explanation to say, well, the reason why things fall is because the earth is moving upwards by acceleration at a certain speed. Well, if that means, it would mean therefore that if the earth is moving upwards, then space that the earth is moving upwards into is another type of space separate and apart from the space that they say is the firmament. And that means that the earth is moving upwards along with everything on it, the moon and the stars and everything moving upwards, accelerating upwards with no limit. All of that is unproven, made up, hurry come up, sitting in their bathrooms and their bedrooms trying to come up with things to try to explain the flat earth has never been proven by science. So the denial of gravity and trying to explain it and to replace it with so-called acceleration upwards and density and mass. And you notice that they are using terms that have been invented by scientists. They deny the valid observations and experiments and tests and proved principles of science. But to explain their hurry come up theory, they borrow the language of science, same science that they frown upon. So they're trying to use acceleration and density and mass. Where they got those terms from, the same scientists that they're trying to disregard and reject their findings. Really weird. Another thing that I've noticed with the flat earthers is that they believe that if you can't prove something by your senses, it doesn't exist. And so there's this over-reliance on you have to see it with your own eyes, you have to prove it with your own senses. And yet every day they are operating by things that they have not been able to prove by their own senses, and they take them for granted and accept them. But they deny other things once it is opposed to their flat earth theory. So for instance, they use their telephones and their tablets and the technology of internet to try to reach the world with their ideas. They have never been able to prove with their senses that Wi-Fi exists. Wi-Fi, that invisible signal in the air whatever it may be, radio signal or airwaves which transmit information over empty space. They have never seen Wi-Fi and they can't prove it with their senses, but they accept that it exists and they use it for their own purposes. Wi-Fi, which was discovered by science and scientists and is made use of in the technology, and they gladly grab onto it and use it, but they deny reality once they say they can't prove it with their senses. Many of them, of course, they have never seen a germ or a virus or a bacteria with their naked eye, but they accept that they exist. They would have to rely on the instruments of science to be able to see what bacteria looks like and viruses look like. So this is a kind of confused, mixed up circular reasoning that we get from flat earthers. Another oddity that is among them. Now, another thing that the flat earthers are known for is they will tell you that the ancient civilizations, people of the past, of a wide variety of cultures, believe that the earth was flat, and so it must be true because so many ancients couldn't be wrong. So they deny modern science and modern technologies that prove over and over that the earth is a ball, a globe, and they go back to the ancient primitive ideologies and views and perspectives of the ancients. Ancients who never even knew about germs and viruses, that they are microscopic agents. They had no way of telling then. But they prefer to go back to the ancient archaic views of the world and deny modern science. And it's proofs over and over that the earth is a globe. So they believe in ancient primitive views and reject modern science. It's not like, they try to blame everything, for instance, on NASA. And they say that NASA is in a big conspiracy to fool the world that the earth is a globe. Sad thing though is that NASA was just invented, I think in the 1950s. Well, that organization of astronauts in the United States was just organized in, I think, maybe the 1950s. Just a little over 50 years ago. What that means, therefore, is that all of the last 2,000 years of knowledge coming from the various scientists from all over, scientists from the Middle East, scientists from Europe, scientists from all over that have recognized that the earth is a globe, the more you study it using scientific methods. Christopher Columbus and everybody recognized this, that the earth, long before NASA came on the scene, but they are blaming NASA for some conspiracy to try to fool the world that the earth is a globe. And of course, when the various scientific methods are used to prove, whether it be live video footage, real live pictures, real experience of astronauts who travel to space, who have landed on the moon repeatedly, they tell you that it's all made up, fictitious, by Hollywood, using the technology of photoshopping to doctor all those pictures and videos to prove that the earth is a ball. And interestingly, the next weird thing that is believed by the flat earthers is that all pictures which show the earth being a ball-like object, all pictures that you can see, real live pictures that are taken. For instance, this picture you're seeing was taken in the 1960s from just above the moon as the satellite circled the moon. Right now we have today the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which goes around the moon and map the surface, just like we have satellites going around the earth daily to map every inch of the earth, so we can use Google to the point where anybody can use the technology, zoom in on your own home, on your own house, on your own street, and prove that it actually captures the real life images of where you live. You can literally zoom in on your own backyard and see objects in your backyard that you place there, to prove that in truth there are satellites above us mapping the surface, every inch of it. So we have satellites now going around the moon. And in the 1960s, we had a satellite, or it might have been the Apollo mission, that was above the moon, taking the earth from a distance. And there you seeing it in a distance. Clear proof that it is a ball-like object, looking like a marble, one side in light, one side in darkness. But what did the flat earthers do or say to try to escape this irrefutable proof that the earth is a ball, a globe? Photoshop. It was a photoshopped picture. And yet Photoshop was invented in 1988, and it was invented specifically for Windows computers. Windows computers never existed. Computers never existed which used the Windows technology in the 1960s to be able to so-called doctor and Photoshop this picture taken in the 1960s. But this is a kind of roundabout, crazy, odd reasoning that comes from the flat earthers. So whenever something is proven by real life photos and videos, all doctored. This International Space Station that is up in space, built by and is actually where scientists and astronauts from various nations go, and they spend months up there and do studies. They have cameras mounted permanently pointing down at the earth and showing the daily rotation of the earth. You can see the gradual rotation of the earth from these live video shots or video recordings. But all denied by the flat earthers, saying that they're all made up, conspiracy theory, NASA, sinister plan to fool the world that the earth is a ball. And yet the earth being a ball can be proven by independent observers in with their telescopes from any nation on the planet. People who have their own observatories and telescopes, they can look on the moon and see that it is a ball using their telescopes. They can observe eclipses of the moon, which is a shadow of the earth falling on the moon, to prove that the earth is a ball. There are so many various methods you can prove that the earth is a ball that is rotating, including, for instance, let me play this video live for you to see, so you know it's not photoshopped and doctored. Here we have this video. This video was taken by someone amateur, live video, showing someone. This is taken by the post of India, and songs about the rise. Somebody literally observe the sunrise in this home crowd. And here is what we see as they focused on the sun starting to rise. There it is, rising from below the horizon, just as you would expect as the earth rotates towards the sun, and the sun would therefore come from below the horizon, just as the Bible itself says. The sun riseth, and the sun goes across the sky, and it goes down at the end of the day and sets. That's what we see in the real world. But clearly, The flat earthers tell us that no, what is happening is that the sun is above us on a flat disk, and that sun is going around in a circle. So the question is, if it's going around in a circle above our heads, when would it go down? When would it come from below the horizon? How would it do that? It can't do that while just going around in a circle above our heads. And therefore, the flat earth theory, trying to explain sunrise and sunset, is another oddity, because it does not harmonize with what happens in real life. Of course, another oddity that they have is to that the sky above us, there's something called a firmament, tough, impenetrable. You can't go through it, and that is why we can't go to space. That is why we can't go to the moon. And yet, interestingly, it is within that same firmament that they are telling us that below this firmament is the moon and the sun. So the question is, dear listener, if the moon and the sun, as you're seeing in this illustration, is inside and below this tough firmament or sky, what is to prevent? According to them, the moon and sun would just be within our atmosphere, just above our heads. Some say as much as up to 3,000 miles up, and some say as little as just anywhere between maybe 40, 50, 70 miles up. So if it's within and under the firmament, what is there to prevent us from going to the moon? What is there to prevent us from going to the various planets and so that are so-called under this tough firmament? Another oddity and weird reasoning coming from the flat earthers. You know, it's interesting, dear listener, that if you should try to support this so-called tough, impenetrable firmament of the sky by the Bible, you realize that the Bible tells you another story. The Bible tells us that the firmament is simply the open expanse, the sky, the heavens above, through which birds fly. Obviously, that firmament, according to the Bible, cannot be a tough, impenetrable barrier if it is the very sky or expanse through which birds fly. And flat earthers can't have it both ways. They can't say that, the firmament is open expanse and it's also tough firmament, because the Bible doesn't use it that way. The Bible simply calls the sky the firmament, the heavens, and it is where birds fly. Another oddity, weirdness, circular reasoning, confusion that exists among the flat earthers. Now, another thing that you'll find is that they will try to deny the shape of the earth, and they will quote scriptures to suggest, for instance, that the earth is let me try to find an illustration here. So they will say the earth is a disc, a circular disc. It is not a ball. And the shape of a ball and the shape of a disc, two different things. And they will line up these two shapes and say two different shapes. Really? I thought that the outline shape of a ball, if you're going to represent it as an outline shape, can't be nothing else but a circle. That's what a ball is. A ball, when you trace the outline shape of it, it's a circle. And so they, for instance, will take you to, those who believe in the Bible, they will take you to, let's go there. They will take you, and by the way, here's the scripture on screen, First Thessalonians 5 verse 21. Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. Let's do some proving now of how their appeal to the shape of the earth from the Bible doesn't work. Let's go to their favorite text, and that's let's go to Isaiah. I'm having some problems with the software at the moment. Yeah, so here we go. So Isaiah chapter 40 is a favorite text of theirs, verse 22. Let us see how it debunked them because of their odd way of reasoning. God sits above the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers. They will say, well, if Isaiah wanted to say that the earth was a sphere, he would have used another word that he used in another passage talking about a ball. Let's go to that passage. So I'm going to just simply do a quick search here because the word ball appears in the scriptures only once. So we can find that scripture very easily. I don't quite remember where that scripture is located at the moment. So I'm just doing a quick search for it. So here we go. Let me just scroll down to, I know it's a text in Isaiah. So here we go. So the argument is, if Isaiah wanted to describe the earth like a sphere or a ball, he would have used the other word in Hebrew that means ball. So here we go. Isaiah 22 and verse 18. He, God, will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. Speaking of Israel, that shall be tossed to and fro because of their disobedience, and so they'll be punished by various nations. Now notice, God will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball. Let's go to the Hebrew. So I'm going to turn on the Hebrew, and let's see what the word ball is. There it is. Roundabout, ball, notice, circle. So even the very definition of what a ball is like is, when it's defined properly, it means it's a circle. So the shape of a ball, even the Bible is admitting that it is a circle. How do we know? This very same word der in Hebrew, that is translated ball, can be translated pile, or can be translated as a clump. Notice how it is used in other scriptures by the same author to mean that that ball can be a circle. Let's prove it. Now, this word der appears in a couple of verses, and I want to show you where they are. In Isaiah, the same author, he uses the word der, Isaiah 22:18. That's the one we're looking at the moment. Well, let's look at how he uses it in another scripture. Isaiah 29 and verse 3. Notice, and I will camp against thee round about, and will lay siege against thee with a mount. Notice earlier that one of the definitions of der being a ball or a sphere is that it's a circle. And notice, God is saying, using the same word der, God is saying that he will camp against Israel as a kind of punishment, round about, and will lay siege. Now notice, everybody knows that when you have a city, and it is when you have the enemy comes and lay a siege around that city, round about it, they are forming a circle around that city. So even the very word der itself is defined as having a circular shape, and even the way the word is used otherwise, it shows you that the word der, when being defined by the Bible, it describes that ball as a circle. Just like how the enemy circles the camp. I will camp against thee round about. That roundabout or circling of the enemy around the city is the word der. So therefore, the argument that, if Isaiah wanted to use, if he wanted to describe the earth as a ball, he would not have said circle, which is another Hebrew word. In that Hebrew word, he uses the word chog. Now here we have Isaiah himself proving that the shape of a ball is a circle. So when he says, let me go back to it, when he says that God sits above the circle of the earth, Isaiah 40 and verse 20. Let me go there. Let me go back to it to prove it to you, dear listener. when he says that God sits above the circle of the earth. The very same Isaiah describes the shape of a ball as a circular shape. So Isaiah 40 and verse 22, there it is. God sits upon the circle. What's the shape of a ball? What's the shape of a sphere? A circle. In other words, there is nothing in this text which can deny the reality that Isaiah could be seeing the earth as a ball. Because the shape of a ball is a circle. Just as I showed you earlier. When you compare, put these two things side by side on a surface and you look at the outline shape, it's a circle. So that leaves the flat earthers with very little to work with when they're trying to appeal to the scriptures, because it can work either way. Earth is a ball because the outline shape of that ball is a circle. And the reality, dear listener, is that if God is going to sit upon the circle of the earth, this is the image that we get. Because notice, God is sitting on the outline shape of what the earth is, circle. And for you to sit upon a circle, you're sitting downwards. And the outline shape of that object would not be flat. It would be vertical. For you to sit upon the outline shape, which is a circle. The only way that can happen is for it to be a ball. Outline shape of a ball is chog in Hebrew, a circle. Now, as I come to the end of this presentation, there are so many other things I could talk about. The flat earthers, they will tell you that, the proofs that are used to show that the earth is a sphere, they don't stand up to scrutiny. So for instance, they will tell you that if you are trying to prove the earth being a ball or a sphere by saying when you observe a ship going below the horizon, it's not really going below the horizon from the bottom upwards and disappearing over the horizon from the bottom upwards. It's just that the ship has disappeared away from our view because our view is finite and we can't see in the distance. So what they have done these days is to use telescopes and binoculars to draw back the ship into view to show that it has not disappeared. But it's interesting that they never show you that if you look through that telescope and the binoculars and continue to view those ships, they will do the very same thing by the bottom gradually disappearing, then the top. All they do, is bring back the ships and the boats into view with telescopes. Yes, that's true. Your eyes can't see in a certain distance. So what may seem to have disappeared over the horizon can be brought back into view with a telescope. Fine, I will accept that. But what they fail to do is to continue to view that ship through the telescope to watch that it will gradually disappear bottom first, then the top, proving clearly that the horizon is curved, because only a curved horizon will have that kind of reality. Ship disappearing first, bottom, then the top. That's because, their kind of scientific proof is not one that takes you to the full proof of what they're trying to say. They will go halfway and jump to conclusion when they're running their so-called experiments to prove their flat earth. Now, it's it's interesting, dear listener, that you will find the flat earthers who are Christians, for instance, pick and choosing scriptures here and there to try to support their flat earth theory. No, the point is, nowhere does the Bible say directly that the earth is flat. Nowhere does the Bible say directly that the earth is a globe. Scriptures are drawn on by flat earthers and put together, and they interpret them by saying, what is called eisegesis. They interpret them to say that the earth is flat. And not only flat, but the earth has literal columns under it, pillars holding it up, literal windows in the sky through which water come down. And of course, they stop there because the Bible also says that the earth has in the sea doors and bars to keep the sea in. But they don't grab that, They deny that and they overlook that. And the same Bible says the earth has a cornerstone. Just like when you're building a building and you're putting a cornerstone to finish the building. One wonders where in the earth is that literal cornerstone. But they ignore that and deny that. The Bible even speaks of pillars of the sky. In other words, columns that hold up the air or the sky above us. One wonders where would you go to find that? So they overlook that. But they cherry pick scriptures to try to support their flat earth theory. And they interpret scriptures which should be taken figuratively and literally, figuratively as a metaphor. In other words, the Bible uses expressions which describe the earth like it's a building. That is why it speaks of windows and doors and bars and cornerstone and foundations and pillars, because the earth is being described like a building, just like we saw earlier, where it shows you the fixed directions of the compass are described like there are four corners. Imagery, metaphor, not literal. But the flat earthers cherry-pick scriptures to try to support their flat earth theory, and they ignore others. Inconsistent, odd way of reasoning, and that is why their theory will never stand intense and fierce scrutiny, because it is all a hodgepodge of mixed up, confused ideas which are not following true principles of biblical analysis and the true principles of earth science. Now I want to close. I notice this. I want to close with this last poster that I saw on a Flat Earth website. And it is the idea that everybody, the whole world is lying that the earth is a globe. And here's why they say that the earth is lying. The whole planet has conspired, and all of the scientists and all of various countries around the world, everybody, NASA and everybody, is trying to lie to the public that the world is a globe. Because by lying, if there's no globe, there will be no rotation of the globe. By no rotation, there'll be no orbit. If there's no orbit, there's no heliocentric model. In other words, the earth is not going around the sun. And if there is no heliocentric model, then it means that the earth is the center of the universe. It's a geocentric model. And if there is if there's a geocentric model, then it would mean that there's no Big Bang theory. No Big Bang theory means that there will be no Darwinism or belief in evolution. And if there is no belief in evolution, then there will be no missing link. It would simply mean that as humans we're unique. We're the center of everything. It would mean that God is our creator. And it would stop people from joining the New World Order. This is a kind of roundabout, crazy, mixed up reasoning that comes from flat earthers. Interestingly, the world being considered as a globe was found out by scientists from all over the globe hundreds, indeed thousands of years before there was any NASA, before the Big Bang theory, before Darwin and the evolution theory. So the truth is, these are just mixed up connections being made by flat earthers, which make no sense. So what? The people of Greece and Rome and Europe existing thousands of years ago, proving that the earth was round. They were doing it because of Darwin that was coming years after them and NASA coming hundreds of years after them. Makes no sense. But all this does is to show you the kind of conspiracy theorists that flat earthers are. They will grab anything to try to support their case. Crazy, confused, paranoid, suspicious kind of reasoning. And they would grab anything which seemed to support their view, even if it makes sense or not. To them it makes sense, because in their paranoid minds, the whole world is trying to fool everybody, those who are not on their side, that the world is a globe, so that there can be a new world order and an acceptance of evolution and Big Bang Theory. Well, here's the reality. I don't accept Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory in the sense of the universe came about by itself out of nothing, with nobody guiding the beginning of anything. I don't believe in evolution in terms of life came from lifeless things by itself, by accident, and everything developed from lower life forms by the ravages of nature. But I certainly believe that the earth is a ball, because the evidence is there all over the place, from true earth science, from the Bible itself, makes you know that the earth is a ball. The only lie that is being told, the flat earthers are lying to themselves and lying to those who follow them. That's where the lie is. There's nothing to be gained by anyone accepting the truth that the earth is a ball. Nothing. There is no sinister plot to fool anybody. That's just what the reality is. The earth is a ball. God sits above the circle of the earth because the earth, as a ball, as a sphere, has that outline shape, as we see even Isaiah himself in his own writings strongly suggest. So at the end of the day, dear listener, I want to close by saying flat earthers, they seem to be living in an alternate world where knowledge is turned upside down to suit themselves and their weird way of thinking, their odd way of thinking. But those of us who look at things rationally, objectively, without any agenda, we just take the truth and see it for what it is. Flat earth theory can't stand real scrutiny. It is a hodgepodge of confusion and weirdness, roundabout reasoning, things that don't hold water when you analyze them carefully, and that is why it has to be rejected. Dear listener, continue to dig for the facts. Continue to analyze the facts. Let no one fool you. The truth of the matter is the flat earth theory is an oddity that will remain with us, just as we see the LGBT movement has taken the world by storm. An oddity as well, where people are turning reality upon its head, because the time in which we live is when people will accept error for truth and deny truth as being error. They will accept black and call it white, and see white and call it black, because that's the confused world in which we live. Flat earth theory, that's what it is. It's an ancient, outdated, archaic view of the world that has long been proven to be wrong, to be erroneous, to be faulty, it cannot find proof that is irrefutable. And that is why it has to be rejected. Get the facts, and once you get the facts, you will realize that the flat earth theory is just simply odd. Thank you for listening. Take care.